message that there are laws that come from God, and they are more important than the laws that come from men. It was then that it struck in me that there is another role for the arts other than doing plays to be famous and popular, and maybe one day, I don't know when, make a little bit of money. It was that time exactly that we realized that we are people who have a struggle, and that struggle is for liberation. And we are not exempt from that struggle simply because we call ourselves artists. The problem with being an artist is that when you stand with your little play, you fall within the apartheid rules, apartheid discrimination. You have to carry a passbook. While I was doing my matric, I think I was arrested 4 times for forgetting the passbook. And each time my father had to pay 5 rand or 5 days to get me out. It was a miracle I passed the matric. And then as we were doing this play, Antigone, one of the actors, Shaka Ngukulu, a teacher, an incredible actor, but no memory whatsoever, could not remember a line. So my job was to stand behind him and feed him his lines, which made me know the whole play in order to assist him. One day, Shaq didn't come to rehearsals. He was gone, arrested, spent 7 years on Robben Island. I had to step in and perform the Haemon in the play. But then we heard from my brother and the others that Shaq was doing a one-man performance of Antigone on Robben Island during lunch. The biggest joke was, how could he? He doesn't know the words. So how could he do this? And then it was then again in 1966 that many of the serpent players were already, some of them arrested, were on Robben Island. And that we attending Norman Chinga's trial in Craddock. Athol went there to speak on character. I don't know how it helped him. That's exactly why he was found guilty. But where Mabel, Norman's wife, was there. And just before Norman's trial began, an elderly gentleman in his late 60s took over this heavy coat and says, "Sisi, you from New Brighton. Take this coat to 33 Mandi Street in New Brighton. Give it to my wife. Tell her I got 15 years and tell her to wait for me." Mabel took that coat to 33 Mandi Street and was met by an elderly lady with gray hair, very dignified and beautiful, and she was 69 years old. When Mabel handed over the coat, the lady said, "Oh, thank God. My husband got 15 years. Others got the rope in Pretoria. Others were sentenced to life. He will come back." And then we stopped and said, what happens to the coat? That was the birth of protest theater. That was the birth of the liberation theater. That was the birth of what we call relevant theater. That coat made us workshop the conditions and circumstances where they will have to part with the coat. It was from there on that we decided that no more shall we do a theater for theater's sake, art for art's sake. We have to understand that our role was critical and important within our own community. We have to understand that we as artists hold a mirror to our own community. What they see in the mirror, they may like it, they may argue, they may not like. That's not the purpose or the role of the artist. The artists have held a mirror that the community must see itself. It was then that also we attracted another force of the security police into the work we do. And suddenly we were being disrupted in our rehearsals and performances by these absolutely brutal policemen, and some of them were black, stopping performances, scrapping scripts, and finding out what this is about. Why have you changed this? It was then in 1972 that we created Sizwe Banzi is Dead, which again was born out of the fact that a black man has to find work, but he lives in King Williamstown in the rural areas of Kwanontampa. Incidentally, that's where Winston Jonah comes from. Arriving in Port Elizabeth, he's endorsed out that he does not belong to the urban area of Port Elizabeth. He must go back. He can't go back because the wife said, if you don't bring in food, we will die. And in the middle of that search, we found out that he could stay, but he had a decision to make. Is he prepared to sacrifice his own identity, his own humanity, and assume the ID or reference book of a dead person who has the right stamp and right conditions to remain in Port Elizabeth? That opened up the world. In one performance in Cape Town, we got an invitation immediately to take this play to England. We sat down again and we said, what would be the point? What would this play mean among the English? What is really telling our story to the English? At that time, we were so politicized and so happy and powerful and proud about the work we do. In fact, if we put in a play, Lulu, and the policeman did not stop it, we went back to the drawing board and said, we've got to find a word. Well, that's going to make the policeman angry. That's going to make the white men not like the work we do. And some of the words were very simple. Release Nelson Mandela. That was it. Place banned. Let Oliver Tambo and the exiles come home. That was it. Once the play was banned, the booking shot up. During the waiting for passports and all to go to England, we then created the island, which was based on the fact that I told you that when Shaka Gukula was on Robben Island, he was doing a one-man performance of Antigone for the island inmates. So the island was created as a keyhole for our people outside to see what's going on that island, which at that time we called the University of Life. We all wished to be arrested so that we could go to Robben Island. So if it meant that we have to do a serious crime, we were ready to do it. But the greater honor would be to be hanged or to be killed for what you believed in. We believed that that would mean my family, my life has been worth something. We then prepared to get our passports. Winston got his passport early. Arthur Fugard got his passport. I didn't get mine until about 3 weeks before we go. And finally, through the intervention of the Royal Court Theatre, Lord Soames and Lord Sainsbury, people that the theatre people knew, I found a traveling document which defined my nationality as unbepalt, undeterminable. Because I refused to take on the Ciskai passports, which then would mean I would have a right to a South African travel document. And that's how I traveled. But that was very little of our problems. Arriving in London, immediately, there was a silence. There's nobody communicating with us, nobody even asking. The publicity was all over the place. And then we heard that the organization, the anti-apartheid, the internal structures in London are still kind of doing some research on these two black young men and this white man. And then we were invited to Africa Center in Covent Garden. We got in there, Winston and I sat down, and there was the Council of Liberation. Lionel Ngakane, Louis Nkosi, there was Dennis Brutus, and there was all the kind of Bloke Modisani, and there was also a representative from the organization, and there was another representative from the organization, and all they asked, tell us how this work came about. So we gave them the story of how this work was created, where we come from, and they said, okay. The following day, the entire 12 weeks that the Royal Court was sold out, there were even displays of artwork and photographs and by Dumile, and then musicians outside, Dudu Pukwane, all the people came together, the Manhattan brothers, Joe Mukhotsi, they came and supported this project. The anti-apartheid even had a desk in front of the theater. But the greatest award, Lulu, that I've ever received as an actor was being told at the end of that performance that there were two people who'd like to see me outside. I went outside. It was the grand old man, O.R. Tambo, and Mamu Adelaide Tambo. And he looked at us with Winston and said, thank you. And his famous line, what you did tonight is what we've been trying to do over the 30 years we've been in exile. Showing the English audiences, the politicians, the people who've been trying, the business people, the evil of this apartheid system, the inhumanity of it. And people came out of there feeling and asking questions, what can we do? What can we do? It is then that Orr said to Winston and I, you are recognized as part of the struggle for liberation. He said to us, your names will be found in Dar es Salaam in this register of those who worked very hard for the liberation of our country. That was the biggest gift to Winston and I. We walked around high-hailed and saying that we've been recognized. Our names are in Dar es Salaam. And of course, it then opened the international community. When the plays moved to America, we were there, received by Tami Mhlambiso, by Inogomo, by Obrinkomo, by all the representatives. The Khositsile was there, you know, Professor Willie Khositsile. The ANC received us. Here was a problem. We didn't think that would be a problem when we go home. We win the Tony Award on Broadway, and then Best Actor. I look at Winston and he says, what are we going to say? And I said, I'm going to say thank you. I'm not going to say I thank my mother, I thank God, I thank Jesus, I thank my agent, I thank my director, I thank my producer. I just said thank you. And Winston did it even shorter, thanks. We walked off, stunned audiences. For the first time, 2 actors received the Tony Award, and they were from Africa for the first time on Broadway. We are right back in South Africa. Oh, well, and suddenly we immediately got detained. Because of a review by Clive Barnes in the New York Times that said this is the heaviest indictment on the evil, illegal Boer government of South Africa. Now I'm sitting there in Sanlam being interrogated by Ruben Marx and Nivo about what is this play about. I said, the crit is not a play. It's a review by somebody who saw the play. There's nothing in the play that says that. And he used all the F words following that I needed to shut up. It was from that moment that we realized that we have an extra role, a duty to play. Wherever we went from, traveled around the world. I was sitting in my detention cell, Mthatha. After 15 days, the prison warder, White, kept saying to me, and don't jump out of that window. Don't hang yourself. You people have a tendency to do that and claim the special branch for hanging you. He was planting in my head that I'm here forever, and the only exit was to take my life. And one day, a black warder slid under the door a piece of paper, which when I opened it, it had an article in London. It had the pictures of Oliver Tambo, the pictures of all the people in London. It had all the top actors demanding in front of the South Africa House, release John Kani, release Winston Chona. After 15 days was the first time I slept that night, because I said, they can't kill me anymore. The world knows they have me. And that immediately made us re-look at the role of the artist. To understand that we have a special gift, that gift which is communication, that gift which is creating images and being the gift of people, giving people exactly what we believe they feel and interact with. We have no solutions, but we create this possibility of a dialogue beginning. We create the possibility of engaging with our audiences and finding an opportunity to interact with each other. And everywhere we were, I remember when we were in Australia, we were called the Oliver Tambo boys. Because the word had gone round that we had got the seal of approval from the big man. When I went back to England after being detained, I had another honorable honor of being invited by Father Trevor Huddleston for tea. I was shaking because the cup was so, the tea wasn't warm, the tea was cold, and there sat this giant, wonderful man and said to me, thank you for the work. We notice, and with you, and we pray for you all the time. And these are the moments that stand out more than the awards, the recognition, lifetime achievements that my life I've garnered throughout my career. But then you ask yourselves, what's the role of the arts? What mechanism? We come now to the 1990s. We hear that Nelson Mandela is about to be released. we hear that the de Klerk government has decided to release. I said to myself, how dare do you have the right to release? You have no right to make that decision. You're falling under pressure. It is necessary. You are in serious trouble. You need these people. And it's exactly when we started to change gear in our struggle within the arts. We thought, all right, where do we fit in now? Now the negotiations are taking place. And we asked even that when they were discussing in Codesa and Kempton Park, are there any artists present? So we could get an opportunity to put our case across so that we could also be part of the groundwork that would lead to the document that would free South Africa or make us a normal society. We waited for everything to come out, and we then moved on into campaigning around the country. If in the government, the first cabinet of Nelson Mandela did not have a Minister of Arts and Culture. It had a Minister of Sports. And then Mr. Ben Gubane was, from the IFP, was appointed Minister of Arts and Culture, Science and Technology, with science and technology getting 3/4 of the budget. And the other quarter of the budget took another 20% to 30% for running the entire office structure. So we were shortchanged from the beginning. I remember then having my play, and I was the MC for the inauguration, an event that took place in Pretoria, the Union Buildings. Nelson Mandela was receiving the Queen. So he said, come here, John, come over here, tell me. How are things at the market? I said, they're fine, Dad. It would just help us if we get some small assistance so we could continue with our programs of educating, informing, of mobilizing our people, also of passing on this legacy to the next generation. Madiba said, Mary Mkadana, come here. I want you to talk to John later. And suddenly I get a call from the minister, who Ben Gwan said, why did you talk to the president? Did I ever say I'm not going to fund you? I said, no. He asked a question and I answered the question honestly. And that was the beginning. And immediately then in approaching the area of what are we going to do with voter mobilization? Because some of the farmers had told the farm workers that if you vote for the white man with the gray hair, not the one with the bald head, we will know. And then we were asked immediately by the structures to find a way to go to the rural areas and the communities to teach people about the secret ballot. I remember one moment we had somewhere towards KZN where we had about 40 people in the room. And we took a basket and we put names, my name, and we put Ramla Makhene's name, and say, now, here's a little piece of paper. If you vote for me, make an X here and put it in the basket. If you vote for Mr. Makhene, put an X there and put it in the bucket. When all these pieces were in there, we then sort of swirled them around, and then we asked the people, come and get yours. The one you put an X. When they rummaged on the basket and kept keeping these pieces off, they said, I can't find mine. And then another elderly gentleman says, so they will not know which one was mine. That was the role of the arts. That was the art, giving people education, giving people knowledge and information so that when the election comes, certain decisions are made. The same thing happened in 1995 with the Truth and Reconciliation. We went again to grassroots to explain why we needed this process. Why is Bishop Tutu, Nelson Mandela, and all these elders, why are they giving in? Because we expected the Nuremberg-style trials. All the people who tortured me when I was arrested and detained, I wanted them to stand trial so that I could be the prosecutor. I could be the lead evidence person against what they did to us. But when the decision was taken that we're going to go another way, we then assumed immediately the responsibility of going there, using art, using workshops. New works came out. Bacchus and Truth and Reconciliation, because we realized that you must understand the emotional damage to the interpreters who have to interpret Neverhold's statements that says, and then I shot him, not in the third person, but say, and then I shot him. In this Zulu, then it appeared as if that the interpreter was saying, I shot him. And I went to a very traumatic period, trying to kind of being sort of cancelled throughout that process. So the victims were not only the people who died, not only the people in the families, it was also the interpreters that had to be in the first person in doing this. Theater stepped in, artists stepped in. And immediately, even the musicians started recording songs. Poems came up that were talking about a better South Africa, a new South Africa, a democratic South Africa. We started looking at, asking questions, as somebody said to me in Port Elizabeth, "Hey John, can you explain this democracy? What actually does it mean? Because I'm still standing here in Ngadin, Kwesistrato." And I thought, what am I going to say to this person? But the question in me was burning all the time. I was beginning to ask a lot of questions to myself as well. I remember from the 60s, Lulu, right to the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, we fought for the liberation of South Africa. We fought for the struggle. We fought for freedom. How the hell did we end up with democracy? That was never mentioned. But we had to quickly understand that as artists, create workshops, go into the community and not say this is the better solution out of many others and saying this is the only way that South Africa will be able. Because tomorrow when we vote and become a democracy, we have a bigger task of nearly about 30 million to 40 million people who will want to see, not on the postcard, this new South Africa, but for themselves when their lives change. And this is exactly where the role of the artist is critical and important, is to be able to interpret his own environment. I like sometimes actors that say, this is just a businessman, please, come on. We're now almost 25 years in our democracy. Can't you move on? Move on from what? I still carry the wounds and of near association, which I survived, 11 stab wounds. I still carry the memories of being in that cell and being interrogated. Even when I did Miss Julie, a play where I was the first black actor to kiss a white woman on stage, and suddenly that became the biggest furor. And when the police detained me and asked me what the hell was I doing, I said, no, you should ask the white actress. She's the one who kissed me. I didn't kiss her. Even when we did the first black Othello in this country by a black actor, it's always been done by white actors, and I performed it at the Market Theatre. Again, the performances were stopped, bomb threats, because of the relationship between Desdemona and Othello. But I must say, I did look for these troubles. I did, in my making choices, I did want to do work that contributes to the advancement of humanity and freedom. When we talk culture, are we talking nation? Are we talking our inheritance? Are we talking our identity? Are we talking our languages? Are we talking anything that has to do in building up an African? Because there is the colonial time, and then there's the apartheid time, where our culture was stopped, literally wiped off, and we imbibed a new culture, which is the oppressor's culture. We even perfected the oppressor's culture by speaking better English and better Afrikaans than the oppressor. Some of us even learned ways of maneuvering and surviving within the culture of the oppressed. 1994 comes, now we talk about decolonization, very late. So how are we going to do this? I'm sitting here talking to my grandson, and I'm thinking, what do I say to him about my culture? Is it the one pre-94? Is it the one now from 94 to 2020? Or is it the culture that I'm talking about that both of us are going through today? Where we are told about a non-racial South Africa, non-sexist, democratic, just. Since when did the word sexist come in the conversation? When we talk to our children, when we talk to our mothers and fathers. But we understood the intention, we understood the blatant explanation. Today we have a situation where we talk about femicide, gender-based violence. We even have men who've put together organizations to protect, to protect women. I always say no man has the right or not the audacity to think that they can protect our women. No. They don't need that. They need me and you to change so that they would be safe. They need me and my son to change so that we would be safe. They need us to not talk non-racialism, but to be anti-racism. Not to talk because that we are this on gender-based violence, but to talk about what are we going to do about it? What is the action? We make these big statements. I laugh because when you said about what's happening, we look at our television screens, and I'm in America, and we're talking Black Lives Matter because of men shot or knee on the neck. And suddenly the demonstrations get big. More people join in, including white and black, in the movement, and suddenly the banner in front was Black Lives Matter, and it's overtaken by another banner that says All Lives Matter. And in no time, it's overtaken by another banner that says systemic racism within the judiciary. And I'm thinking, excuse me, where's my fight? My fight was about Black Lives Matter. My fight was about the senseless killings in our provinces, senseless killings in our homes, in our neighborhoods, that rape and assault of women and children. Do we need another Indaba? Do we need another Kodesa? Does the artist come out now again within our democracy, within this freedom that we are in, and create work that examines and interrogates this and come up with probable solutions of how do we deal with this? I had a crazy idea, Lulu. Remember during the struggle when we had street committees and regional committees, when someone stole something, the jungle court would come together and we would hit the bums of this young person raw and he will never steal again. I thought, no, I'll be in trouble with the Human Rights Commission. No. So the role of the artist is to fuel the flame of decency, humanity, of true freedom, of peaceful coexistence, of social justice, of social cohesion, of true reconciliation, the recognition of each other as human beings. I ask young men when I speak to them, look in the mirror and what do you see? He says, I see myself. I said, you're fixing yourself. You're looking at your gray hair. You're looking at this, women looking at the eyebrows if they're done, not the money I paid. See yourself for the first time, because if you do that, you'll see that you were created in the image of God. And that's, if you have that direct link with God, you shall have deep reverence for life. And this is the role that we've taken upon ourselves. I know when I look at the artists today and I look at the youth today, it's about how much do I make, how much do I amass wealth, and even at the point of somebody having 4 cars in the garage, a Lamborghini, a Bugatti, a Mercedes-Benz, and a Ferrari. You say, as Thabo Mbeki would say, is it really necessary for Africans to be so materialistic that they flaunt to the public their achievements when there are people who walk the streets barefoot without food and not knowing what will happen tomorrow? It is our role then as artists to raise these questions, to create this platform of interaction and dialogue. We will continue doing this even in a free South Africa, even in a democratic South Africa, because our role did not stop only anti-apartheid. We were not anti-apartheid so much as we are for justice, for fairness, and for democracy. It is a great honor for me and a pleasure to be talking about how the arts and culture plays a critical role in this country. Yes, politicians can make statements and say, this is what we're going to do. We take that statement, amplify it into a drama form workshop, and show it to the people so they can see themselves and refer to it with visible examples. Yes, we're talking COVID-19, but who tells everybody we need to go out there and say, it's very simple. It's very simple. Wear a mask, social distancing, and simple hygiene. Avoid this called super spreaders. Last week I went to my sister's funeral. She was 55. I was 50 meters away from the coffin. Didn't even come, I didn't even see what she looked like. We went to the cemetery in Port Elizabeth, and we were another 50 meters away from the coffin. I went back to my sisters and I said to them, yes, the ancestors have welcomed her. She's gone to rest. She's not a casualty of COVID-19, that God had made that date before COVID-19. And I'm speaking as an elder, and I'm also speaking as an artist, so that they could understand that these things are the journey that we are on this earth for. It is our role to soften the blow to my mother. And I say to my son, don't forget your mother is a woman. You seem to forget that when you talk about how powerful you are, how intelligent you are, how successful you are, how much you've amassed. There's a woman who gave birth to you. Therefore, your first respect and honor is to that woman before you go to even to your wife or your girlfriend. And these are the things that are critical in building a better community and a better South Africa. The role of the artist will continue to be the watchdog of this government, will continue to be the conscience of this society. We have some thermometers, some instruments within us that we itch when something unjust is taking place. I cannot sleep when I see an old woman with 4 packets of plastic groceries, and she's falling on this side coming from SASA with a little money, and she has to feed the family, which includes 5 children whose fathers and mothers are nowhere to be seen. It makes me think, what is going on? What is my responsibility? When Yenene was raped and killed in the post office in Cape Town, I asked myself, was there anything I could have done, me, John Kani, to have stopped and avoided the death of this child? A little woman in Roodepoort, 9 months pregnant, is found hanging in a tree with a lot of stab wounds. And I'm asking myself, where am I failing these young girls? Everything that happens now at my age, I don't know why, I seem to take it personally. I grieve. I start writing a new play, and suddenly an incident happens. And I stop because I can't be creative. My heart's not right. My latest play, Kunene and the King, which opened at Stratford in a home of Shakespeare and had a successful season, only stopped by COVID-19 in London at the West End, we came back. It examines exactly, in 25 years of our democracy, what does a black man say has been the change? What does the white man say has been the change? Played by a brilliant actor, Sir Anthony Sher, who says nothing. 25 years of corruption, 25 years of mismanagement of government funds, 25 years of rape of this and that and that and that. And he looks at me as a black man and says, what do you celebrate in these 25 years? I said to him, the fact that I didn't kill you. You're still alive and have the freedom of expression to say what you're saying to me now. If you had played your part together, South Africa would be much more better than where it is. Instead of you being the critic of everything I do, instead of holding hands together, the private, the corporate sector, the public sector, the simple individual, the man in the street, the children, and everybody come together, hold each other's hands and say, let's plot the way forward. Let's find a way. That is the role of an artist. And these words, as you quote, were made so simple by Oliver Tambo, by saying, we see what you do. We appreciate what you do. This is a man who left this country with one little document called the Freedom Charter and had to face the onslaught of the international community. He had to go to Russia, to China, to Europe, to America, to England. He even addressed the United Nations. El Kabalaze Bizana. This is a man who stood in front of them in order to transform or overhaul the image of the African National Congress that was part aligned by the West as part of the PLO, as part of the IRA, the Red Brigade, and all the terrorist groups. But within no time, OR, with the support around him of his foreign policy and the people, managed to get the ANC be accepted, not just as a movement in South Africa of liberation, but as a government in waiting. That's he achieved, a government in waiting. And he had next to him the first lady ever in waiting of South Africa, Mamu Adelaide, who was again the wall, the warmth, where all the women in exile knew that if I talk to Mamu Adelaide, I will understand. When I miss so much of South Africa, when I miss so much of my husband who's never here but married me here or left me there. People sometimes do not understand how the people in exile worked extremely hard to get us where we are. That it wasn't just a matter of a signature or agreement between de Klerk and Mandela. It was the international community convinced by Oliver Tambo and the ANC foreign desk and abroad to believe that the time has come they can no longer support or even go to what Reagan in America and Margaret Thatcher called constructive engagement. Today we talk about systems in education, we talk about transformation. You do not transform what is wrong, you change it. Unless we talk about post-colonial, post-freedom system of education that will liberate the minds and the thinking of our young people so that they are ready to take over when the elders step off and continue the great work, the legacy that has been left to us. That is why I jumped when I was told that I come to talk about Oliver Tambo. He was my hero. He was my father. He liked me. I liked him too. And of course, coming from the Eastern Cape, Lulu, there were giants there, man. Great people there, man. People like Walter Sisulu. People like Governor Mbeki, Raymond Mhlaba. These are giants that came from that province. Forte University, all around. So we had this special pride and relationship with these great giants that remain every time I think about something, I think of saying something, I ask myself, would OR be happy? What I love about this country is when we use art to amplify the struggle, and suddenly, out of nowhere, people saying, Oliver Tambo, Teta no boat, Kululu Mandela Zobusa. 1985, Lulu, when you guys, especially you were there when the school boycott was complete, when we tried to negotiate that children have not been going to school for 2 years because O.R. Tambo had given a directive that said render South Africa ungovernable. And the enemies of the struggle added that no education before liberation. We thought, no, the second part, we're not sure that O.R. could have said that. And suddenly through we managed to make communication with Dar es Salaam, and then the answer came back even from Robben Island that said OR did not say liberation now, education later. And then we stood in the 5,000 full hall in Centenary, and we stood up and says, Mnano Tambo, ewe siyavumela, sivumelana nawe siyavumela, sivumelana. Tambo has been part of the musical culture of this struggle. He has been a source of inspiration in poems, in theater, in drama, in musicals. Tambo's name has been synonymous with that struggle for a better life and a better South Africa. Thank you.
And thank you so very, very much for that amazing, amazing, amazing lecture. There is so much to process, and there's so much that you've said that is so important. And I think towards the end of the lecture, the one sentence you said that just stuck with me is you said, you do not transform what is wrong, you change it. Those are powerful, powerful words. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Kani, for that amazing lecture. And I think an important part of tonight's program is the fact that we have questions from people who have been watching the lecture on our Facebook and YouTube pages, as well as on YouTube, as well as watching it live on SABC. So we have some of the questions, and I'm going to go straight into it, Dr. Kani, so that we can get as much participation before the evening is over. So the first...
All right, let's move away from the Oliver Tambo Memorial Lecture Series, and that was playwright, renowned artist John Kani talking about the role of the artist, saying that it is to hold up a mirror to society, sort of rejecting the idea completely of art for art's sake. Talking about the old days, Griselda, when artists were talking about apartheid, he was commended by Oliver Tambo for really showing people the evils of apartheid. Oliver Tambo saying that what they had achieved in a play was equal to 30 years in the struggle. So an incredible history, and saying that that is still relevant, that artist's role even today.
Absolutely, Francis. With that, let's take a recap of the top stories once again.
The Western Cape's garden route sees an increase of over 2,400 new